To record.
I wanted to go over a few developments since the last meeting, and there have been quite a few. So bear with me. I'll be doing more talking than I usually do, but and if anything's unclear or there are any questions, you can interrupt me, but if we can wait till the end, that would be even better. So since last year, some significant developments. A New York citywide Greenway coalition has been formed, and we have joined it. The Friends of the Hudson River Greenway have joined it, and on behalf of Community Board 8, I have been attending their meetings when I can. Another significant development is that this past year, the City Council authorized and Mayor Adams signed a bill that will create a new Greenways map for the City of New York. Last Greenways map was created in 1993, and as you can imagine, is somewhat out of date. This map is supposed to be created by next year. Interestingly, Hudson River Greenway in the Bronx was actually on the 1993 map as planned but unbuilt. And in 2023, it is still planned and still unbuilt. So in some respects, we haven't made a whole lot of progress in 30 years, but more to come on that topic. Since we last met, we have met with the Greenway coordinators for the Parks Department and the DOT, Department of Transportation, and we have briefed them on the Hudson River Greenway in the Bronx, on our plans and on the feasibility study. So we now have a relationship with the Greenway coordinators at the two agencies that are most involved in greenways, which are Parks and DOT. We've also met with the the chairman of the Hudson River Greenway Valley Authority to discuss the next step in the process we're in, which is to do an engineering and environmental study. And we were advised that if we can raise funding, there is a matching grant available up to $500,000 for that study. I mean, first, we have to come up with $500,000, and then we could qualify for an additional $500,000 match from the Hudson River Greenway Authority. That's significant news. We have met with Metro North, representatives of Metro North, along with the Harlem River Working Group, to discuss both the plans for the Harlem River Greenway, which I will speak about a little bit later, and also to brief the Metro North people that we met with about the feasibility study. They knew nothing about it. This was in 2023, earlier this year, and that feasibility study, as several of you know, was delivered in 2018. So that was one of my concerns, that whoever was at Metro North now might be unfamiliar with it, and indeed they were unfamiliar with it. So we gave them a little bit of a briefing on it and made them aware of it. We've met with elected officials. A few months ago, we met with Borough President Vanessa Gibson. She is the one person, of course, whose jurisdiction includes both the Harlem and Hudson Greenways, and she was very enthusiastic in support. Her big issue is health equity, and she sees greenways as one possible way in which to improve health outcomes in the Bronx. And most recently, we met with Senator Gustavo Rivera on Friday, and he once again, like the other elected officials, is very supportive of the proposed Hudson River Greenway in the Bronx. And we'll be calling on him, I'm sure, and the borough president and all our other elected officials for some help as we move forward. I have separately had conversations with staff members of Congressman Richie Torres' staff. As I'm sure some of you know, because of the redistricting that took place in 2022, Senator Rivera is now our state senator, and Congressman Torres is now our congressman. And the two staff members have both been very enthusiastic about the Greenway. Representative Torres recently provided a community project funding, or I should say funded a community project funding proposal for the Harlem River Greenway for that working group, and that was $1.5 million. So that is one possible source of funding for the engineering and environmental study. And I'm in constant touch with Congressman Torres' staff, and as I say, they've been very helpful. The, just a little bit of background for those of you who don't know about it, the Harlem River Working Group was able to secure, well, I should say the City of New York was able to secure, on behalf of the Harlem River Working Group, a RAISE grant, which is a federal grant that is very difficult to get. It's very complicated. And that grant is for $7.5 million to do a study of the Harlem River Greenway, which would run from Randall's Island up to the Metro-North Rail Yard in Marble Hill, where eventually the hope is that it will connect with the daylighting and the Putnam South project, so that there would be a continuous greenway that would then go up into Van Cortlandt. One thing I want to be clear about, this is not a zero-sum enterprise, greenways. If there is a Harlem River Greenway, that is very encouraging for us and very important for us, because it increases the likelihood that we would be able to get the Hudson River Greenway as well, and have one continuous greenway along the Bronx riverfront that would run from Randall's Island all the way up into Yonkers. So we are in touch with the Harlem River folks. There may even be somebody from that group on tonight. And we stay in communication with them. What's good for them is good for us. What's good for us is good for them. There are two important meetings that are taking place over the summer that I just want to bring to everybody's attention. The New York City Greenways Coalition, which I mentioned just a few minutes ago, is going to have a citywide strategic planning meeting in August, which I intend to attend somewhere in Manhattan. It will be a half-day strategic planning meeting. Equally important, the Environmental Bond Act, as many of you may know, was passed in 2022. That's a New York State bond act, and it has $4.2 million, which can be allocated for a wide variety of environmental purposes, including, for example, access to the waterfront, environmental improvements such as resiliency, both of which I think could be important components of the Hudson River Greenway. For one thing, we would need to do mitigation, environmental mitigation, if any part of the Greenway is built in the river, and some part of it certainly will have to be. So we could go even farther and not only do mitigation, we could do improvements to the Hudson River. And one of the things that I would like to see as part of whatever we do going forward would be some resiliency of the riverfront, because the riverfront is gradually eroding thanks to the fact that the river itself is gradually rising, something that I think we all know about. The Environmental Bond Act is administered by the Department of Environmental Conservation, the state DEC. Right now, there is a so-called listening tour that is taking place, where DEC representatives are meeting with different communities around the state. There is going to be a meeting in the Bronx, in the South Bronx, on August 22nd, the evening of August 22nd. I intend to attend that meeting because I think the Environmental Bond Act right now is probably our best bet to get funding for the environmental engineering study that we need to do. That is a bit of background on what has happened over the last year. I want to say one more thing, which is that in the past year, I have revised some of my thinking. It used to be my thought that raising the money for the study, which originally was in 2018, was estimated at $2.5 to $3 million 5 years later, I think we've got to be talking about $3.5 to $4 million. I used to think, well, that's the easy part. Getting the money for the construction is the hard part. I have come to realize that it's exactly the reverse. That if we can get a commitment for $3.5 to $4 million to do the study, I am sure we are going to get the money to construct the Greenway, because $3.5 to $4 million is a commitment. That's real money that some agency, some government agency, whether it's a state or the federal government or a combination, that will be a commitment to the Greenway. So I think this is the big hurdle right now. I mean, we met one big hurdle, which was the feasibility study that showed that there were ways in which it would be possible to build the Greenway. But I think now this is the next big hurdle, and it may well be the crucial one. So that's a bit of an update on where we are to this point. I will open it up. There are a few more things I want to say, but I will open it up for the moment to any questions or comments that anybody may have. But before I do that, one more thing. I do want to note that on this meeting is Dr. Robert Morrow, Bob Morrow, who's representing Yonkers advocates for the Greenway. And Bob, since, as I say, we haven't met since last year, I was wondering if you would say a few words just to brief us on what's going on up in Yonkers with the Greenway advocates up there.
Sure, thanks. And Bob, of course, left out among the Bobs here that we had met with Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who made the point that once we had the engineering money, it would be fairly straightforward to put together the money for the projects. As you might or might not know, Yonkers, particularly Southwest Yonkers, is considered a disadvantaged community by the Department of Environmental Conservation in their studies. And there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm for everybody I talk to. I've been working with the board of the BZAC Environmental Center and with the Yonkers Paddling and Rowing Club and all the folks who gather around us. And the concept of having such a network of trails, but particularly on the Hudson, and being able to bike or scooter or walk without getting run over by a car is quite appealing to everybody I've talked to, including various members of the government. My sense is that there are funds from attending some of the Rails and Trails meetings. There are extra funds for things that mitigate carbon release into the atmosphere. In other words, the cars off the street. That's another place we could tap into for getting these projects to move forward. The other thing that's happened in the interval, it hasn't come to reality yet, but is in the midst of being built, is a trail from the Ludlow Park Station at the south end of Southwest Yonkers that would go and connect to the waterfront esplanade that is just north of the Domino Sugar Factory, for those who know that. And will then continue on north for another 2 miles or so of walkway, which is already being used by people in Yonkers. There's been a tremendous explosion of waterfront building, and this has really attracts a lot of people. I can tell you our groups, the Paddling and Rowing Club and BZAC and Carol Lawrence group put together an event on Saturday. We put 160 people on the water in our program, and kayaks and canoes. There's a tremendous sense of this would be a wonderful thing with everybody I talk to. So I think we're in a great position to start moving this off the dime.
That's great, Bob. Thank you. The developments that are going on in Yonkers, do they include some access to the river? No. In summary, that's been the business of our environmental center and the canoe club to just make what is a small park accessible and holding the developers at bay with fairly vigorous pushback if they try to take over. And it's worked out well. And we have a march down at the water's edge where people go to the water and seining and other stuff.
And the marsh prevented our centers from being flooded like everybody else was flooded in the hurricane season. Hopefully a lesson has been learned from that.
All right, well, thanks very much. I appreciate it. Do we have questions from anybody? No questions. Well.
Cliff has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Cliff. Yes, now we see you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cliff.
So Bob, more of a comment than question. First, I just really wanted to thank you, Bob, for your incredible persistence on this. You know, it's your energy that's keeping me hopeful and motivated. And I just really wanted to thank you for all the work you've done over the past year. You know, I think there was really a good summary of what's gone on in the past year. And I just thought I'd add a little color to the commentary. So just recently, you know, at Bob's urging, I took a look at the video on our Friends of the Hudson River Greenway website. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out on Greenway link. We've got a terrific video that's been there. To my chagrin, I realized when I re-watched it recently that it is now 6 years old. And as I was reviewing it with the guy who helped us make it and who will help us bring it up to date, you know, it's easy to think about those 6 years as, you know, to think about that and get, you know, skeptical, deeply skeptical as to whether this will ever happen. But that's on the negative side. On the positive side, as Bob indicated, I have always felt that this would be a slog until it wasn't, right? And up until the point where the Harlem River Greenway folks got the RAISE grant, they were looking at our feasibility study as something that that they would kill for, right? So we really are farther along this path than you know it would appear. I think we are well positioned to make that next move now. We've met with all the right people. We've had all the right conversations. Bob, you're spot on in saying that the engineering money is the key to getting this thing built. And more people in positions of power know about this, understand it. And I think one of the things that that Friends of the Hudson River Greenway can start to do now that we are clearly past the pandemic is to revive the public piece of this. Riverfest was, you know, I think key in getting this topic on the map in Riverdale for sure. We've been quiet for a while on that front. In some respects, I think it may have given us a false sense of progress in that, you know, there was so much palpable support for it. And it increased our community's hunger for this thing. But I think it was critical in securing the money that we did get from State Senator Klein to do the feasibility study. So I think the time is finally right to start putting some eggs back into that basket. And that's something I'll be talking to you about over the next few months. And we are going to get that video redone. We do have a pretty extensive email list that we're going to start tapping into more that we have now that we have more news to share. That's pretty much all I wanted to say. And Bob, you'll let me know about the Gustavo Rivera meeting offline.
Will do, Cliff. Thank you.
Thanks.
You just reminded me of something, which was that I know the Friends had a table at the Riverdale Main Streets Alliance 2 weeks ago. I know because I was at the table, and more than 100 people. We had more than 100 new signatures. And one of the things that I know we need to do collectively, both the community board and the Friends of the Hudson River Greenway, is we just have to get more public support. We have to go out to more neighborhoods. You know, this event took place in North Riverdale, and I'm sure that 90% of the people who signed live in North Riverdale. We need to do that in other parts of the community as well, where I know that support for the Greenway exists, and get some more signatures. I would really love to be able to go to the elected officials and say, well, we've got 1,000 people who have signed a statement of support for the Greenway. I think that when you get up to those kinds of numbers, it really starts to make an impression. So the public outreach is something I know we picked up this past year, and we need to continue to do that. But thanks for your comments, Cliff, and I appreciate it.
Fab has his hand up.
I see that. Robert Fab.
Hello. Let me get my camera back on. Hi there. Just wanted to first echo Cliff's comments, Bob, and my thanks too for all you're doing so relentlessly and so effectively. Just something caught my ear when you were summarizing some of the points of the past year. And a naive question perhaps, but that's no surprise from me. Is there any reason, you're saying that the Metro North folks, or the rep you spoke with, didn't even know about the feasibility study? Does that imply that there's any reason to worry that Metro North could renege on the acceptance of their own study? Or is that just a done deal and we don't have to worry? And if it is a worry, how do we ward against that?
The thought crossed my mind as well, Robert, but the study was done, the feasibility study, and it was accepted. At this point, what we're really focused on is moving forward, meaning getting the engineering and environmental study. That will require Metro North's cooperation, because in order to do that, whoever does that study is going to have to be working close enough to the tracks that they will need Metro North's cooperation. So, we will find out at that point if Metro North suddenly is beginning to waver. But I think with the support of the elected officials we have right now, which is everybody from our congressman, our state senator, our assemblyman, our city councilman, our borough president, I think it would be very hard for Metro North at this point to say, well, we want nothing to do with this. I don't think that option is on the table at this point. So, I did have the exact same thought you did when, we met with the Metro North folks and discovered that they didn't know about the feasibility study.
People have retired.
Okay,
Yeah,
enough said.
exactly. Yeah.
It all makes
Yeah.
sense.
It's
Thanks,
the usual
Bob.
turnover. Yeah.
Bob, one question. I wasn't here when you were doing the original feasibility study, or at least not on the board. When do they? I'm familiar with like the Tibbetts process in terms of getting public outreach and kind of community engagement, so that they can understand where people want access to it, or like maybe down by the Target, down by Broadway. Like, where are there places where people would like to have access to the Greenway? Also, just there'll be a bike lane coming across on the Broadway Bridge at some point. The Henry Hudson Bridge itself also is going to have some kind of modification to connect to the Hudson Greenway in Manhattan.
Right.
So, would the study that's kind of the next step, would that include the community outreach part, or is that later in the process, or has that already been done and it was just done as part of the feasibility study?
No, I mean, community outreach is ongoing. I mean, and there will be more of it once we get the funding for the study. We'll certainly have public meetings at that point. Right now, under the feasibility study, one access point was the Spike and Dival train station. And the proposal was to have a ramp from up above, just as there is a ramp to get down to the station right now from the street level, there would be a ramp for bicycles and pedestrians to get down to the river on the other side of both the Metro North and Amtrak tracks. 254th Street is another access point. because that's where you get down to the Riverdale Metro North Station. But that's all that there is at the moment. You know, when the study is done, probably there would have to be some other access points. Otherwise, you've got 3 miles with only 2 access points, and that's not ideal.
Right.
So that's all still to be determined. You know, the difference between the feasibility study and the engineering study is a quantum leap forward. The engineering study is much more detailed. But public outreach will be ongoing, and anytime there is a significant development, like we've got the funding, and now we're, you know, going to put out an RFP for an engineering firm, certainly at that point, we would have public meetings again.
I also think of like the Hudson Greenway in Manhattan. Also think of like the Hudson Greenway in Manhattan. There's like a cantilevered portion that has oyster beds or something underneath. It's like wetlands restoration underneath, and they've softened it. Are those types of ideas also kind of part of the mix, or?
Yeah, there would certainly have to be part of this greenway, especially in the southern portion, would have to be out on the river, because the amount of land between the tracks and the river down there is, you know, maybe 10 feet wide. It's certainly not enough to allow for a greenway on the land. So we'll have to be out in the water, and that's what I was talking about earlier. First of all, the city, the Army Corps of Engineers, probably DEC, every permitting agency that would be involved, would require mitigation for putting the piers in the river and building in the river. I think actually we can go beyond whatever the required mitigation is and do some resiliency projects as well, whether it's oyster beds or plantings that can be done in the river that actually mitigate the amount of storm surge that comes up against the riverbank and would help improve the resiliency. So yeah, that will certainly be part of this whole project. That's why I refer to it as engineering and environmental. It's, you know, it's really got to be both things at the same time.
I also want to mention, if anyone's interested, the feasibility study conducted by Metro North is on the Community Board 8 website.
Right.
And I also want to thank Brent Schneider from Senator Rivera's office for being on the call, and Adam Starpoli from Councilman Eric Dinowitz's office, and also Tim Beer from Eric's office for attending.
Yes, thank you very much to the representatives of the elected officials. I also did want to say, I see there are a couple more hands. I'll call on those folks. I also did want to say that we've been very fortunate over the last year, and it was Robert Fass who just spoke, who made the connection. We have had some pro bono advice from an environmental engineering firm called Mott McDonald, and more specifically from an organization called Leaf Island, which consists of some Mott McDonald people and some others, and they have been very helpful on the environmental aspect of what we need to do going forward, and have provided advice on some different ways in which mitigation and resiliency can be incorporated into the Greenway itself. So I did want to give a shout out to the Mott McDonald Leaf Island folks for their assistance over the past year. And it really is wonderful that, you know, we have expertise and we have people pro bono who are offering that kind of expertise. Sarah, we've got somebody in the waiting room. Jody Colon.
Hi there, thanks, Bob. I'm sort of a little rusty. So you mentioned RFPs. Have we found a city agency who wants to do this, or is the community board putting out that RFP? I remember there were conversations about how CBA couldn't raise money and we couldn't do it. So could you just kind of remind me of where we are with that? I know Tibbetsbrook has a city agency who is taking the lead on that, but where are we with having a city or state agency taking the lead here?
Yeah, that, as I mentioned, both the Parks Department, the City Parks Department, and the City DOT have Greenway coordinators. And when we get to the point where we actually are getting some money in hand, at that point, we are going to have to figure out which agency is going to be the operating authority. And whichever agency that is, I imagine, I don't know this for a fact, I imagine that would be the agency that would issue the RFP. We're not there yet because we don't have any funding in hand. But, you know, one of the reasons that we made these contacts with the Greenway coordinators at the city agencies was that so that we could start a dialogue so that when we get a little closer to the actual fundraising, we know what the process is. At the moment, the process is sufficiently unclear to me, Jody, that I can't really be any more specific than that because I just don't know.
Okay, no, that's where I remember us leaving off, was that it's sort of like, well, no city agency is going to take this on unless we raise money, but we really, as the community board, can't raise money. And so it sounds like it's still at that point where they're saying, great idea, but not saying, we'll do it. And I remember one of the questions that had come up maybe in the May meeting or the previous year was, would they accept an engineering study that they didn't hire the contractors to do?
Sorry, would who accept an engineering study?
Would the Parks Department, let's say the Parks Department becomes the lead agency or whoever it is, would they accept an engineering study that they didn't commission?
Yeah, well, again, you know, we would have to coordinate with them, and the city agencies would certainly have to be part of whatever happens here. You know, this can't be done without approval from both the city and the state. Excuse me, whether it would be a city agency or a state agency that would ultimately be the operating authority, I don't know at this point. But you know, certainly this all has to be done in coordination with both city and state agencies.
So one more comment is, I don't recall it in the budget items that were discussed, but have we put in Bronx link of the Hudson River Valley Greenway as a city budget request to get it on the record?
No, it's not. You know, it's not being funded along with all of the other budget requests to the city, because for one thing, it's likely that the bulk of the money, if not all of the money, is going to come from either the federal government or the state government or both. And so, you know, when the community board does its budget requests, those budget requests go to the city of New York. But as I say, this money is going to be federal or state or both.
Right, but
It's a little outside the process.
But that's how we did Tibbetts too. We put it in there. We put it in there to get it on the city agency's radar, because there has to be money to pay them to supervise the project. So I'm just suggesting that it put it in, like Tibbetts, daylighting Tibbetts Brook was on there for how many years, you know, maybe let's just put it in for the next round.
Bob,
Yeah,
if
well,
I could just interject, that just as one of the things that we did discuss last year, I'm sure it's been forgotten, but we have made requests to both Andy Cohen and Eric Dinowitz to fund the engineering study, but the impediment that they ran into, and Andrea Stewart Cousins described a similar dynamic, is that you can't fund an engineering study with capital expenditures. So that was the hurdle, the last hurdle that we ran into.
That's correct. Thank you, Cliff.
Yeah.
Also, the DEP largely funding Tibbetts Brook because they were under a mandate to diminish the combined sewer overflow. So there were a whole bunch of things that kind of was the perfect storm.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Right. Right, and this certainly isn't the first time that this issue has been a problem, and somehow, you know, the Bronx River Greenway was able to overcome it. So, you know, and I think Bob's right. I think at this point, our best bet for this is the federal money, or the state or federal money.
David Gelman.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think you're right, Bob. These funds are really going to be federal and state resiliency related funds. So it really would not come out of our city council or mayoral budget requests. And also your comment about Metro North maybe wanting to forget about this. I think they probably would like to forget about this, but I think that your persistence with the electeds has kept us well on the radar, and thank you for that. Two things. One, actually looking out my window, something just came up literally yesterday, and within 15 yards of what will be the Greenway. And it's not something necessarily for the committee to do, but maybe Farah could explore this. There is a floating dock with pylons that usually are used to be driven into the riverbed so they can do some sort of construction right at the river's edge, just below the Riverdale Yacht Club. I have no idea what that's all about, but I think it's something that should be investigated. And I hope that Farah, you can do the initial inquiry about it. Maybe the Riverdale Yacht Club might have some answers on that.
Or David,
yes.
it might be staging. They're doing a huge project at the swing bridge. They might be staging stuff up there.
They would probably stage it well south of here, closer to the bridge. But you could be right. But this is really right in the niche, just below the Riverdale Yacht Club. We should certainly know because that is within our purview. And finally, the other thing is we've lost a member of this committee. I was wondering how we are planning on replacing that person. And, since I literally am the closest person to this Greenway, I'd like to put my name in consideration for joining the Greenway committee.
I believe we are going to address that issue at the board meeting on Thursday night.
Okay.
Because this committee and at least one other committee need more people. And we will be very glad to have volunteers at that point.
And also, don't we have to do?
So hold your fire till Thursday.
No, absolutely. I'm quite comfortable with that. But don't we also have to renew the existence of the special committees on Thursday?
That's correct. That will
Okay.
happen on Thursday too. So that will bring this issue up.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Bob.
Okay. Sure. David, can you take a picture of what you were describing before below the yacht club and send it
Yes,
to the
I
board
can do it
office?
right now. And if you let me share a screen, I can show it to you, but give me 90 seconds.
No, that's all right. We don't need it tonight, but, just send it to the board office and we can investigate.
Will do.
Thank you. Anything else, David?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going out to my terrace. No, I don't think so. Thanks.
Okay. All right, thank you. Brett Costello.
Hi, I hope that my question would still be relevant to the discussion now. It was related to the Harlem River Greenway.
We'll go ahead. This is the Hudson River Greenway, but it's close enough that go ahead and ask the question. We'll see if we can help.
Okay. So I understand that there was a feasibility study done there that you said on the Harlem River Greenway.
No, the feasibility study was done for the Hudson River Greenway in 2018, and that was done through the auspices of Metro North. What the Harlem River Group has received a grant from the federal government. Well, the City of New York, on behalf of the Harlem River Group, has received a grant from the federal government to do a study. But that money is still being allocated, and the study has not yet happened.
Okay. Because what I was going to say is, as somebody who has cycled along the Harlem River Greenway many times, there are problems with the Greenway, especially being too narrow. And I don't think that the Greenway has been fixed for quite a number of years, if not decades.
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. Are you talking about the Bronx or Manhattan?
Oh, Manhattan.
Okay. Yeah, there are definitely problems with the Greenway in Manhattan. I'm familiar with that, but that's outside of our purview, and I'm glad to say that's somebody else's problem and not ours. We can't help with that tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Do we have any other questions? All right, so I just want to mention a couple of things going forward. As I said, there are two important meetings taking place over the summer. You know, we meet whenever there's a reason to meet. I mean, we do not make a decision that we're only going to meet once a year. I would love for there to be more activity and more reason to meet. But certainly depending on what happens over the summer with these meetings, we may well have a meeting of this committee in the fall. What we're going to be doing going forward is, as I mentioned, continuing with the public outreach, getting more signatures on statements of support for the Hudson River Greenway in the Bronx. We're going to continue to stay in touch with all of our elected officials because that is the only way we're going to get funding for this project. And we're going to stay in touch with the relevant people at the city agencies like the Parks Department and DOT. It's a constant process of outreach and meetings, but that's what it's going to take to move forward. But again, as I said before, I think the critical step is getting the money for the engineering and environmental study, because I think once we have that, we're going to have a rock-solid case for building the Hudson River Greenway. So it's a struggle. I always thought it was going to take a long time. I have no idea how long. I still have no idea how long it will take. But I remain confident that one day we will have a greenway along the Hudson River. The reason I feel so strongly, quite honestly, is I commute to work on Metro North, on the Hudson River line. And every day I walk down to the station at 254th Street. And every day when I crest that hill between Netherland Avenue and Independence Avenue and start down the hill, there in front of me is the Hudson River and the Palisades. And every time I see that, I say, we have got to get this greenway, because that view is spectacular and everybody should have the opportunity to enjoy that view. So we will continue until we get it. Anybody else have anything to say?
During the Jim Crow era, for Black freedom.
Jody?
If you're wrapping up, I would like to issue an invite to City of Water Day to everyone who's participating, if that's all right.
What day did we still are going to fight for
Sure. Go ahead.
Oh, great. So Friends of Spuyten Duyvil, BCEQ, and the Harlem River Working Group are partnering on an event spanning from Mill Pond Park through Highbridge to Roberto Clemente down to Spuyten Duyvil. So we will be doing habitat restoration, talking about the impact of what happens upland onto water quality, because if we're going to have access to the river, we want it to be clean. So it will be July 15th, 10 to 12 at Shorefront Park, which is at the Spuyten Duyvil Metro North Station. You can come stand on the overpass and envision it crossing out back to the Hudson River. And then we got funding from the Harbor Estuary Program to buy Metro North tickets so we can all go to Roberto Clemente for a celebration and wrap up. So if you come to the event, you can travel with us for light refreshments and some talks at Roberto Clemente. I will send the flyer as soon as I make it, but I wanted to tell you first so that you know what it is when it shows up. So I hope you will join us. Shorefront Park, I've spent the last year and a half rehabilitating one of the trails. It's looking amazing. We're now gonna clear the view towards the pond so that you can actually see the water when you're in the park. So I hope you'll come and see what hard work all the volunteers have put in the last year and a half to really reclaim that part of our waterfront.
Thank you very
Jody,
much.
sounds
Jody.
great. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
what
the
date
more-
was that?
It's Saturday, July 15th, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then we'll be catching the 12:52 train to Roberto Clemente.
Very good, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jody. The more waterfront, the better. Okay, if there are no other comments, then we will end the meeting.
Bob, if you
Thank
want, I've got that
everybody.
picture. If you want to take an extra 30 seconds.
I'm sorry, say that again, David?
I have that picture I can put up if you want for 30 seconds.
I'm not quite sure how to,
Just let me share.
All right,
Have to go to share screen.
I have to go to,
I'll just make him co-host. Yeah.
Adam has a question.
yeah, well, let's do this. Adam, we see your hand up. Let's do the share screen and then we'll come right back to you.
Great, thank you.
There we go.
Try this. Get started at Angie.com today.
Can you see it?
Fresh delivery.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the Riverdale Yacht Club. This is the train station. And this is the repair dock that just appeared yesterday.
David,
I'll
can you
make the
pinch
first
that out
inquiry
for
on
a zoom in a bit?
Okay.
Zoom in or zoom out?
In.
HelloFresh.com/pickup16 for 16 free meals plus the first box shipped free.
Seems pretty fuzzy now.
It's more like a pylon, yeah.
So again, this is that repair dock, Riverdale Yacht Club, and the Riverdale train station.
Okay, well, we'll look into it.
Okay.
Thanks, David.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, and appreciate it, David. Adam,
David has to stop sharing.
Yes,
Oh,
hi
sorry.
everyone.
Stop share.
yeah. Please. Go ahead, Adam.
Great, thanks. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Adam from Councilmember Dinowitz' office. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to join this evening. I just wanted to ask for my notes here. I know you mentioned that there were 2 summer meetings coming up. If you could just repeat those so I can take note of that.
Sure. There's one meeting is with the citywide Greenways, the New York City Greenways Coalition. I'm doing this from memory, so.
It's August
Adam,
10th, Bob.
Is it August 10th?
Yeah, the strategy meeting for the coalition.
And that's in the morning, right?
Yeah,
That's a morning meeting. The location has not yet been determined. It will be somewhere in Manhattan. So that's the one meeting. The other meeting is the Environmental Bond Act meeting. That's taking place on August 22nd. It is something called La Central Gymnasium in the South Bronx. I don't have the address. And it's an evening meeting between 6 and 8 p.m.
All right, honey, wake me at 8:45 so I can start my coffee to get it ready for tomorrow.
Belinda, would you please mute yourself? Thank you. Okay, Adam, did you get that? I can always
Yes.
email you the information later, but I'm pretty sure that information is correct. I'll double check it tonight.
Sure, no problem. I'd be happy to connect. But thank you. I really appreciate that. Thanks again.
Sure. And Bob Morrow, your hand is up.
2 very quick things. We were down there paddling near the club yesterday. It looks like they're working on their dock for their sailboats. That's my impression also for launching boats. Part 2 is we will in the next week or so be doing a GoPro survey of the whole length of the Greenway, and we'll edit that down quickly and get it out to everybody too. That was
Bob, we're having some trouble hearing you. The one thing I did hear was that you said that you thought that dock was there for sailboats. But after that, you were going in and out, and we really didn't catch what you said.
My apologies. Blame it on Verizon.
So you can get an email.
It looked like they're fixing their launch where they put their boats in, including their sailboats for their classes. That's what it looked like to me from the water. And the other part is we're going to be creating a short movie of the trail from Yonkers to Spuyten Duyvil from the river sometime next week or so. We've a group of young adults doing that work, and we should have it soon. And we'll give it to everybody.
You're going to take a video from the river, from the area from
Yes.
Ludlow and Yonkers down to Spuyten Duyvil? Is that right?
Yes,
Oh, that's fabulous.
yes, that's
Yeah.
right. It's very easy to see. I was hoping to have it by now, but we had too many other things going on. We'll get it done.
Okay. Yeah, we'd love to see it, Bob.
Should be pretty soon.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, once again, does anybody else have anything to say?
Adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, is there a second? I second.
Okay.
Opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for attending the meeting.
Well
We
done.
will be
Good night,
in touch.
everybody.
Yep, have a good night.